very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society.
You're in violation of secure communication procedures, Commodore.
So we just went ahead and fixed the glitch.
There is no America. There is no democracy.
Our fifth objective, a new world order.
There are no nations. There are no peoples. There are no Russians. There are no Arabs. There are no third worlds. There is no West.
Right-wing conspiracy.
What do you call it when the assassins accuse the assassin?
A new world order.
Thank you for plugging in to the Stones Unturned podcast.
Well, just a second there, Professor. We fixed the glitch.
I'm your host, Professor Thomas Henry Horan.
He reads everything.
Hello, Victoria. Hello, Lisbon. Hello, London. Hello, Derry. Hello, Pocatello. Hello, Cleveland. Hello, Sault Ste. Marie. Hello, all you lucky devils. You are plugged in live to the Stones Unturned podcast, and I am live, Professor Thomas Henry Horan. Hi, everybody. Hi, Creepy Crawl. Hi, Scott. Hi, Shane. Hi, Anthony. Hi, Adam. Hi, Libertad. Hi, Channel. Hi, Kevin. Hi, Melissa. Hi, Sea Pines. I'm in a good mood. This is the episode we've all been waiting on. I've really spent 5 years solid, plus a couple of years even before I started doing the podcast episodes. But since I started doing those Ketty episodes, that was 2018. That was the summer of 2018. And I'd started working on getting the podcast up and running before then. But by that time, I was, checking into this, all of a sudden, Son of Sam, Manson, I had to go into all of that stuff for darn good reasons. And we're going to have to go back to all of those cases for reasons you will now see. So it's been between 10,000, 12,000 hours easy, just to get the fundamentals down. So this is really the last episode of the first season of the Stones Unturned podcast. The background information you need to know before we dive deeper into Zodiac, let alone all these other cases. You don't know anything about the so-called Zodiac killer. If you haven't read this book, you know less than nothing. Okay? Ah, damn it. I knew there was a reason why I didn't want to turn the camera around. The Myth of the Zodiac Killer. It's still on Peacock. I know it's still on Peacock. That's the first chapter. Everything you think you know about the Zodiac Killer is wrong. When you read the actual case files, look at the actual fingerprints, ballistics, all that real evidence, the actual witness statements, what they really said. That stuff tells a very different story from the story that we're all used to from the last 50 years. And really from the last 35 years. Great when Gray Smith's book came out, which is full of lies. So the first 1/3 of this book debunks Gray Smith's hoax. The middle 1/3 you can skip the first time through. It's all about the history of vigilante journalism, blah, blah, blah. Bunch of academic blah, blah, blah. Then the last 1/3 of the book goes through the police report, original police reports and things, tells you what really happened, coming straight out of the reports, and then shows you who actually wrote those letters. The letters themselves were a hoax. Now, you have to bear in mind, if you've ever heard of me, that's probably what you've heard of. That's chapter 1. That's chapter 1. The documentary based on that is kind of chapter 2. It's not just rehashing my book. But after that, the Stones Unturned podcast is chapters 500 through 10,000. We're just barely getting started. Plus, there's Drew Hurst Beeson and everything that he's done, and everything that Tom O'Neill has done. Okay? So here's the new kid on the block. So all this background information and showing you a method for how to not only do the research, not only how to analyze the evidence, but how to present it to people and get people involved and get feedback. And we've got this going on now, particularly myself and the 47 Stone Inn. So, who have waited, some of them waited longer than 5 years for this. So, now that you find, this is the last episode of homework. It's the last 2 hours, 2 solid hours of homework. Once you see it, then you'll know what we're talking about from now on. So very quickly, we'll get Willis Morgan. There'll be a follow-up episode a week from today. I briefly get into something, and that'll be next week's episode. It's not a very good teaser, but it's a pretty teasy subject. Let's put it that way. Well, hello back to Connecticut. London is calling. That's outstanding. And Robert Graysmith. Robert Graysmith's book is a hoax. It's a fraud. But it's based on a fraud that happened before then. So I've done a couple of episodes like on the Code Within the Code, little bits and pieces. Wait till you see the follow-up. The book, and now you'll... questions that I'll tell you it's in the book. Most of you have read it by now. So what you've seen now is, for the last 5 years on this podcast, is background information to get you ready to see the episodes that come from now on. About Zodiac, about Son of Sam, about Manson, about JFK, more about Lindbergh. I couldn't believe. So when you see today's episode, this reminds me, what's going to happen is something completely different from last week, and I still need to fix this. No, I don't need to fix that. No, I need to fix it. So I'll fix it while I talk to you guys. What I'm going to do from now on is I'm going to try to get on a couple of afternoons a week, mornings a week, depending on what I'm doing, and I'll be working on an episode, and you guys can chat, and you can now your suggestions or requests will mean something. Up until now, right, it's been a one-way street. You give me information, I present whatever the hell I feel like. But now, from now on, you guys will have a lot more say into the next upcoming episode, because the homework will be done. You will have seen enough, and it will start to sink into your pretty little heads. Because I can refer back. Learning is a recursive process. I've had 40 some odd years to look at this material. You're just getting a look at it for the first time, mostly. So information, material you guys have been sending in for 5 years, we'll finally start to see it coming back out. Because I'm like, you need to see this background information, and I needed to see it. So this is it, today's episode. No, there was no Zodiac killer. There was no serial killer. It was something far more bizarre than that. But what this book does is it sticks to, for one thing, this book only is it's based 100% on the actual case files, fingerprint, the original witness statements, everything from the original investigations and original newspaper stories. That's all there is in this book. This was the material that Graysmith based his book on. Not only is it obvious from the real case, from the actual case materials, that Graysmith lied about them relentlessly, but he knew that the Zodiac killer was a hoax. But it wasn't just some childish prank. The guy who actually wrote the letters turns out to be, you'll see on the Stones Unturned podcast. But I identify the person who actually wrote the letters. And then there's a documentary based. They basically went, like, this book is chapter 1, the documentary on Peacock right now, Myth of the Zodiac Killer, that's like chapter 2. And now this podcast will be, but you have to understand that basic material, the actual case files and what they actually say, and why Graysmith lied about the whole thing. And then it turns out that there's, okay, who wrote on the card, Lake Berryessa? The killer. But I'm not now, you need to read this book. See, you're bringing up questions about the myth of the Zodiac Killer. You can either read the actual case files for yourself. It's only 1,100 pages, or you can read my book. Okay? Those questions are answered in the book. It's not what you think. You are intimately familiar with the myth of the so-called Zodiac Killer. Almost none of it's true. And one thing that I will show you much more of, you've seen glimpses of, if you're a premium subscriber, click the links, get subscribed. You'll see this stuff for yourself. That Son of Sam and Zodiac have a lot of things in common, and one of the things they have in common is this. When you look at the victims, they're all very young. They're all junior college age. They're seniors in high school, junior college age. They're all very young. So you don't see any apparent links between the victims. These seem to be random killings. There seem to be linked somehow, but they seem to be random at the same time. Doesn't make any sense. Well, it turns out that the links are between the parents. And this is true in both Son of Sam and in Zodiac. Now, you don't even get that in this book. But you got to read this book. Otherwise, you're not going to understand anything that's coming at you. But you have to understand. Every movie you've ever seen, every documentary you've ever seen was based on Graysmith's book, which is mostly lies. He had access to all that material, and he just lied about it all the way through his book. What the witnesses actually said they saw, what the ballistics reports actually say, what the fingerprint reports actually say, tell a very different story. And that story turns out to be far more bizarre and far more interesting than a serial killer. He's not even a serial killer. He's a terrorist. But the truth about the cult that he talks about in his letters, like that's an actual cult, and the guy who actually wrote the letters actually fought in the Pacific in World War II and knew all about that cult. Blah, 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 blah. But you need to read the book. Okay, enough about the book. Well, it's if you look at the yeah, that's right. The killer. The footprints. Like the footprint evidence is totally different from what you've ever been told about the murder at Lake Berryessa. The actual reports typed by Hal Snook, those footprints, they don't go where you usually see them going. They tell a very, very different story. So that's true all the way up and down the documents. So once you understand that, then you're going to understand what you see in this podcast. I'll show you the mugshot of the Paul Stein shooter coming up in the next few months in this podcast. But you got to pay for the premium. Yeah, footprints. The footprints at Lake Berryessa tell a very different story from the story you've been told in every documentary and every movie about the Zodiac Killer. Those footprints tell a very different story in real life. See, Graysmith could have gotten in trouble for printing the truth because he'd be interfering in ongoing police investigations, so he couldn't tell the truth. But then you find out why he lied. Like he was in on the hoax from the beginning. Like he lies about his job at the Chronicle. Graysmith lies about almost everything. He spells the names of the victims correctly, gets the dates correct, but everything that you've seen lies. Yeah. So when you watch the documentary on Peacock, what they did was they didn't just turn this into a documentary. What they did was they take the next step, but they used the title. So they interviewed people who had never been interviewed. They interviewed Darlene's ex-husband, and by the way, they were never legally married. But Jim Phillips Crabtree is the best suspect in her murder when you look at the real case files. And in a lot of other murders that aren't included in the official Zodiac murders. Yeah. It's the truth is far, and it's based on absolutely nothing but actual police files, FBI files, crime scene photographs, nothing else. I never use, My uncle told me a story about the Zodiac. I don't even read that crap. It's worthless. I only use actual evidence. And the actual evidence always tells a very different story. And then the thing we have learned since I started this podcast, I started the podcast to debunk stories like, oh, Manson was a CIA operation. I'm like, well, I'll debunk some of that stuff like I did Zodiac, and that'll establish some journalistic credibility. And what happened was, it turns out that not only was the CIA involved in the Manson family, Charles Manson's not even the most important member of the Manson family. Read a book called Chaos by Tom O'Neill. Read my book and read Chaos by Tom O'Neill. And then, when you watch Drew Hurst Beeson's videos on Zodiac, and Paul Avery and Don Chaney, he's right about all that stuff. But they're suspect, like they were involved for sure, right? So, and he's in the Peacock documentary, Myth of the Zodiac Killer. Watch it. They did a really, really good job. But it's like chapter 2. Yeah, and the more horrible the secret, the bigger the lie, right? Look at the atomic bomb. Developed entirely in secret by mostly foreigners. There are not that many Americans working on the atomic bomb. The people who built it didn't know what they were doing. One of the ladies who worked at, not Hanford, she worked at Oak Ridge, and she would sit in front of this machine, had dials and knobs, and she would watch. And if she'd keep these dials, and that's all she did all day long. She just knew what she was like a human computer chip. She didn't know what she was doing until they opened the museum, and she went back. She was retired. She worked there 20 some odd years. She went back there and she's watching a documentary, and there was newsreel footage of her, and they were explaining what she was doing. And she had no idea what she was doing exactly. She was just monitoring gauges and turning knobs to keep gauges in certain ranges. For 20 some odd years, that's all she did. And that's all she knew about it. I haven't read anything of The River by Edward Hooper. The River by Edward Hooper? So I will queue up today's episode in just a minute. Oh, I've been talking about it. Where have you been, Adam? Is that the one? Yeah. See, he was only off by one little teeny tiny thing. It wasn't defective polio vaccine that unleashed AIDS in the human population. When that guy wrote that book, there was one thing he didn't know. That secret laboratory in the jungle was real, all right, but they weren't doing polio research. That had already been done. They were doing illegal germ warfare experiments on hepatitis viruses. And that's how they transferred simian immunovirus into humans, not through defective polio vaccine. It wouldn't work anyway. You couldn't transmit HIV through polio vaccine anyway. But they were deliberately infecting humans and chimps with hepatitis vaccines, and then I think they were monkeying around with vaccines. With hepatitis virus. They were deliberately infecting people with hepatitis viruses. And they were getting them from chimpanzees. And that was how they injected enough humans around different parts of the country that you get. That every word of that guy's book is correct. But he accused them of making cheap bootleg polio vaccine and infecting people with HIV that way. No, they were doing illegal germ warfare experiments on hepatitis viruses and vaccines. That's how that happened. Otherwise, he's right. Oh, thanks, Ross. They don't call me the professor for nothing. Well, there's another good documentary. I think it's on if you subscribe to the premium, you can find it. If not, it might be on YouTube. It's called The Myth of Patient Zero. They concocted this myth about Patient Zero so that people wouldn't trace the origins of AIDS back to where it really came from. And there's a good documentary about that isn't necessarily tied in with Hooper, but it just shows that the whole Patient Zero thing was a hoax. In the words of Abraham Lincoln, what a joy to be comprehended. Well, let me get today's episode queued up so you guys can watch it, and I'll watch it with you. So it's going to come from a different player window. I think I'm going to do this from now on. I've actually got it uploaded, and we're just going to we're all going to go 3, 2, 1, and we're all going to start watching it, okay? And I will keep this going for a few minutes like I did last week. But I think this might be the simplest thing to do. So what I need to do, here we go. Go to Pages. And then it will appear in its normal spot tonight at 9 o'clock and in a new post page. So this will be right above the live chat on the premium site. A new window is going to pop in, and I'll tell you when to refresh. Because this will be so much simpler. No, I don't have this done yet. And then, as a backup, I've got it queued up where it could be played live and looped from the Restream server. I'll use that as a backup. This is the main way of doing it. And as you can see, it's far superior already. But this way, if you come in late, and I can hang out here in the YouTube lobby as an usher, greeting people who are coming in late. But I'm going to get this started. It's 2 hours long. I want to get you guys a chance to watch it before the Super Bowl starts. Okay, so there's the chat. What I need is another player window, a spacer, and another player window. And I need to get that from here. And I found a way to make it smaller, even to save people's bandwidth. Because you don't need to see my face in 1080p every episode. Okay. Embed code. Copy code. Come back here. HTML. Embed a video player. And then this way you can fast forward and you've got DVR control. It's the search inside the video version, but I'll just release it here in a minute. I'll count 3, 2, 1, go, and you'll refresh your screens, and you should be able to see it. Make sure it's the right episode. It is. Update this. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Now refresh your screen on the premium site, and you should see today's episode above the chat window, but beneath my live stream, blah, 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 which I will keep going for a few minutes just to usher people in. And I'm trying to make the whole thing more interactive. When I'm putting episodes together, I'll try to stream while I'm doing it so we can talk about you can help me. You can make yourselves useful for a change. And then this way you can fast forward, you can go back if you miss something, you can search, we're still getting together and live chatting. And you guys can get together, you guys can just get together on your own and watch episodes at the same time or whatever. Yep, there it is. There it is. Okay. Enjoy. You earned it. You earned it. Here's to you. Here's to you, lucky devils. Here's to you, beautiful, bountiful boosters. So the boosters will see. And then let me, if you're subscribed to the YouTube Premium membership, let me release that right now. Let me release that episode right now. Hi, Pat Thomas. What is the date of the episode? You mean today's? Go to where you see the live stream, the front page. When you're subscribed, you'll see me talking live. And then beneath that, you'll see a player window where you can... I previously uploaded today's episode. It's just a live premiere. So everybody just 3, 2, 1, go. Start watching. And then tonight, it'll automatically post in its own post. It'll post, and then you'll find it like you normally find it. But I'm going to live premiere them when I pre-record them. I'm going to do Melinda Kula live. Try to. Yeah, so you guys can see her reaction. That's going to be complicated. That may not work. I'm going to get, but I'm going to get my first live one. I'll get, well, you'll see. Yeah, so I'm just going to hang out here on YouTube for a few minutes just to usher people in. No, Ross. According to the evidence, there was no connection between the murders, except the letters. Number 2, the letters could not have been written by the real killer because the person writing the letters knew things the real killer couldn't possibly have known. He had no access to that information. 3, the victims are connected to each other, not by killer. You probably have multiple killers. The witness descriptions, everything else, fingerprints, rules out a single killer. There's just no way. There's just no way. Number 2, right, it looks like somebody on the inside is just taking advantage of inside knowledge to create a fictional character to terrorize the public with. But once you learn all of that, then further investigation into the guy who wrote the letters reveals, make a long story short, you're looking at a first-round draft pick of the CIA. You've probably heard of Tony Poe. He's friends with Tony Poe, going back to high school, through the war. Well, after the war, they both go to journalism school together. This guy teaches Tony Poe all kinds of guerrilla warfare stuff, improvised explosives. Okay, like no kidding. You think, why is that guy pulling a stunt like this? And then one of the things we find out is the connection is not between the kids who got murdered. The connection is between their parents. Their parents are connected in very interesting ways. Very interesting ways. Then there are all of these connections between Zodiac and Manson, for sure. And then later on, you see this thing erupt again in the Son of Sam case. Yeah, so the conclusion of the book is, based on the evidence Graysmith used to write his book, there was no Zodiac killer. The letters were a hoax. And Graysmith knew that when he wrote his book. But then the follow-up to this book, because the documentary took 10 years to come out, so I had to wait. But now what this podcast is, the premium podcast is about, is going beyond the book and the documentary and going deeper into who these people were, who the victims were, who the parents were, why somebody would target their children. And it's exactly the same stuff that's going on in Son of Sam. The case files and things from the Son of Sam case are coming out, and they're telling a very different story from what we've been told, even from what Maury Terry had dug up. But here's the thing. We found by accident We found a piece of concrete evidence that proves that Maury Terry was basically right. Son of Sam murders were about heroin smuggling and money and laundering the profits. That was the primary thing. And yes, there's this cult, but that turns out to be a smokescreen, just like in Zodiac. Just like in Zodiac. It's a real cult. Manson family, they talk about it. It's the same cult. But you got to understand, according to the actual evidence, according to the actual fingerprints, the actual crime scene photos, autopsies, police reports that have come out, the Manson family never killed anybody. Helter Skelter was a massive hoax. And what we found out on this podcast is this goes back at least as far as the phony kidnapping of the Lindbergh baby. That turns out to be the phoniest case of them all. And it's up to here with spooks. It's up to here with mafia. It's up to here with spies, Nazi spies, communist spies. I started this podcast to debunk all that stuff, and it turns out to be 10,000% true. and now how it all ties together. So in today's premium episode that people started watching, click those links. You'll see the finale of a background investigation that shows how this is still going on today. You're going to see cells of money laundering of drug profits. They're literally drug profits and other tax evasion and all this other stuff, and how these cells are operated and how they're connected to spooks who control them through pizza people. They use them to control these cells of financial shenanigans that are going on. You'll see the culmination of that, and then the previous episodes. Well, it wasn't just connected to Arliss Perry. See, you don't know anything about Arliss Perry. There's far more to that case than you've ever heard so far. But this was the thing. This is an actual physical book that proves Maury Terry was right in ways even he didn't know. But the cult is kind of a front. The cult is a smokescreen. Satanic panic, Red Scare. This is standard operating procedure, which has been used over and over. And you don't know anything about the real Lee Harvey Oswald. You only know you have to understand the second gunman theory is a CIA disinfo prop. The CIA put out the second gunman theory to confuse people about what really happened, because the truth about Lee Harvey Oswald is far more interesting than any conspiracy theory you have ever heard. And it ties directly into Zodiac, into Manson, into Lindbergh, into Son of Sam, into Jonestown. There's Charles Manson. Not only was Charles Manson not the most important member of the Manson family, he's not even the first Charles Manson. He's one in a long line of Mansons. There are more Charles Mansons than Carter's got liver pills. This is standard. The Proud Boys. The Proud Boys is a modern day Manson family. It's a phony terrorist insurgency group started by the FBI. For false flag purposes, for propaganda purposes, for false flag purposes. The five founding leaders of the Proud Boys have turned out to all be paid FBI informants. This goes back to Manson. This goes back to the 30s. This goes back to the Mexican Revolution. Subscribe. It's $9.99 a month. You can binge watch all you want, and there's at least one live episode a week. What happened? Did that end? Use stats. 0 dropped frames. So whatever's happening, wherever. No. Okay. Charlie subscribe. Now it's complicated. I don't libel people. I don't dox people. I don't do anything. But YouTube is super ticklish, and Facebook has its own police. So I have my own private website. You need to subscribe. Now, like today's premium episode that's live premiering so people get together and chat, but those episodes, you can search inside the video. You can search for words, search for people, like Charles Manson. It will skip through the video and find Charles Manson. Skip for objects like gun. Okay? There's all kinds of content I could never, ever, ever put on. I've tried putting it on YouTube with hilarious consequences. So you need to get subscribed. Plum Island Research, thanks, Seacow. And for $9.99 a month, you binge watch. And I've uploaded classic documentaries that are hard to find, like the Clinton Chronicles. It's on there. Lots of those. Old CIA training films are uploaded on there. I promise you it's worth it. It's a little counterintuitive to get around because I've tried. So many of my paying members are of a certain age and they like to watch this show on their phone, and I have to make it very simple for them. Not that I'm being condescending, as I am wont to do, but and I'm always tinkering with the site, but yeah. Okay, maybe I should just stop distracting you people and let you watch the thing. Is my downstream is what's getting messed up here? Yeah, Ross, I promise, man. $9.99. Check it out for 1 month. Once you get the hang, I keep it real simple. And then I'm going to do a lot more live streaming where I'm putting episodes together while I'm talking to you guys, and even on YouTube. So, okay, maybe I'll just get off here and let you guys watch the episode. It's really good. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and I'll see you in a couple of days.